Hello everyone and welcome back to the Final Chicane with me, Kristen Boylan. Okay guys, time for the British Grand Prix review at Silverstone. It's actually the second week in a row that I'm recording this on the Sunday after the Grand Prix. It's 5:30 now, so the Grand Prix only ended half an hour ago. I'm fast. I'm on my game today. I'm going away on holidays tomorrow, so I was hoping that I'd be able to edit this podcast episode on the plane, and I wouldn't really get time to record this tomorrow anyway, so that's why I am doing it today. Hopefully there's no new updates or anything that I'll miss to talk about. There wasn't last week, surprisingly enough, which I thought there would be because there was a lot of drama around last week. It's also my birthday, so I can do what I want, so that's why I'm recording it today, and probably will be a shorter episode than usual, but hopefully still entertaining enough. Before I get into everything today, I will say next Monday it should be, I have an interview coming out with a RedBull employee, so look out for that. We just sort of talk about her career and you can just watch it anyway. She was really sweet to talk to though, and I love doing that interview, so look out for that next week. But yeah, we'll get into Riddle of the Week. A lot of people think my riddles have been too easy, some people think they've been too hard. This one I've decided, okay, I don't need to pick hard drivers. I'll just try and make the riddles themselves a little harder. Now, everyone finds them different because not everyone has the same knowledge about Formula 1 as others. So just try your best and see if you get this one. I was born in Hervois and racing is my aim. Started my F1 journey in Belgium, making my name. With the stunning Monaco podium, where I shined with pride. In Hungary, I claimed my first victory. A thrilling ride. From a junior at Lotus to the Force India track, I've raced alongside the best, never looking back. I've earned my place among F1's elite. Who am I with skill so fleet? So who's that? I will tell you the answer and a little story behind the person, a little history at the end of today's episode. So let's get into talking about Silverstone Grand Prix and the media moments that came before it. So one of the biggest media moments of this week was obviously the news that Ollie Bearman is joining Haas for 2025 and 2026 at least. We don't know how long, it's just a multi-year contract. Again, the teams aren't getting any better at telling us how long these contracts actually are. We used to get exact years, I swear. But now we just have to guess. But it is quite impressive for a rookie to get a multi-year contract. Obviously, it's different for Ollie because he has had his chance. Not his full chance, but he has had a chance in Formula 1 to showcase his talent, which he did. He was in the Ferrari and he showed that he could drive the Ferrari, and that's really all that they need. They need to know he can drive a Formula 1 car well and fast, and that's exactly what he did. So I'm definitely excited to see a rookie on the grid, and that rookie in the form of Ollie Bearman is especially exciting. He may not be the only rookie joining the grid next year though. Obviously in free practice we saw a lot of new rookies taking the FP1 this weekend. We saw Franco Colapinto, Isaac Hadjar, Jack Doohan, and of course Bearman as well. Which brings me to an interesting point from Williams that James Vowles mentioned over the weekend, and it was basically him suggesting that Logan may be swapped out mid-season. Again, I feel quite strongly about there being no need to say that to the media. Like, if it happens, it happens. But to start talking about it before it's an official thing, it just puts so much unnecessary pressure and just a downer, I think, on Logan. And he's not going to improve. Threatening to fire a driver and letting everyone know that you want to fire this driver mid-season is not going to help the driver improve. It's really not. It just puts unnecessary strain on them mentally, and now I feel like we could do it looking after their mental health a little bit, and I'll always be against team principals speaking out in that sort of way against drivers. I mean, I have huge respect for James Vowles. I think he's a great team principal, but I think, and all the team principals do it at some point, I think everyone could just be a little... Some things don't need to be said to the media because Logan already knows all of this stuff. He doesn't need everyone else to as well and get all of that hate train Obviously, if he's not performing, it makes sense to switch him because Williams can be in a position where they get points. Logan, I mean, we'll talk about Logan's race today, which was not a bad race at all, but Logan hasn't been up there with Alex and Alex's consistency, so it's normal to be curious about that. But the mid-season swap also brings rumours on who they could swap with. And that's where the rumour of this weekend about Esteban Ocon came about. And basically the rumour is that Esteban would leave Alpine mid-season to go to Williams mid-season. And that would be the mid-season swap. Not that Logan would go to Alpine, I'm sure Jack Doohan would potentially go to Alpine then in place of Esteban. But that's a thing, and I don't think that stems from Alpine wanting to replace Esteban mid-season. I think that's more of a Williams move. I don't know if I'm convinced that Esteban is looking at Williams. Haas apparently are also looking at Esteban. Now that rumour seems to be more solidified because there's a whole day as if it's going to be announced soon that Esteban is going to Haas. Once again, a rumour, nothing confirmed. There's a free seat at, well, there's potentially a free seat at Haas. Obviously, Magnussen hasn't confirmed he's leaving or whatever, but Ollie Behrman is confirmed, and there has been hints that it's going to be Magnussen's last year at Haas. So Haas do seem more of a likely or a better contender to Williams, who are quite inconsistent. They had a strong run today, but Haas, especially in the form of Nico Hülkenberg, had a really, really strong run today. So it'll be interesting to see where Esteban Ocon goes if he chooses to stay in Formula 1. I know a lot of people were criticising him, saying he's not going to have any options, like he'll be out of Formula 1. But he's a good driver and he's definitely good enough to be in Formula 1. He's good enough to be in Alpine, but that's not going to work out. He's not going to be in Alpine, so it'll be interesting to see what his position is next year. Obviously, the big news coming out of last weekend was the whole Lando and Max situation. We figured out pretty quickly that none of the other drivers care, to be honest. Most of them were asked about it in their media on Thursday, and they're all like, oh, it's just so dramatic, like it's been blown out of proportion hugely. Max has been made into such a villain for a move that was just not what everyone was making it out to be. Obviously everyone has their own opinions on it, but that seemed to be the wider opinion in the paddock among the other drivers. I'm not saying that's my opinion. Might be, might not be, you'll never know. My opinion is that I genuinely stopped caring about 10 minutes after the race ended. I did my podcast, and then every time I saw people be more dramatic about it online, I was just like, oh my god, this is racing, like let's just move on, you know? Lando admitted that he was a bit heated in the moment, talking about Max and what he said in the media pen about how he'll lose respect for Max if Max doesn't apologise, and Max didn't apologise, but Lando said there's no actual need for Max to apologise in the end. They were both saying that they both had woke up early on Monday morning after the race to apologise to each other. There is a lot of respect there. Max said in an interview, he said something like, the most important thing was not losing Lando as a friend, or like losing that relationship with Lando. There's nothing wrong with thinking that, and I don't know if that's actually at the forefront of Max's mind, or if he was just like trying to calm the media down a little and stop the whole Max Lando pitting against each other in rivalry before it got a chance to feel. But that's what I guess it would be. It would be Max trying to put out the fire before it even began. I mean, God knows what Drive to Survive are going to do with it, but be interesting watch, to be fair. A few liveries for this weekend for the home race of Williams. They had the flag on the car. Visa Cash App or B were doing some sort of promo throughout the weekend for the movie Twister with Daisy Edgar-Jones and Glenn Powell, and they were in the paddock and they recorded some content about that. Obviously, it is Red Bull Racing's home race. I know Red Bull is based in Austria, but Red Bull Racing is English, so it's their home race as well. So they had their own livery, and obviously there was a lot of pressure on Checo going into this weekend to perform. And you know, I'll talk about Checo a little later. I will say last week I did not realise Checo had damage during the race, so I might have been a little harsh on him in that regard. And he had damage, and not bad race considering the damage that he had. Like, he posted a picture of it after the race and quite extensive. So I do apologise for not pointing out that. I had no idea. To be honest, I don't think the commentators even mentioned it. So that's on me. But unfortunately not any more of a successful weekend for Perez, this one. So FP1, obviously we had those young drivers, quite successful run for all of them except Jack Doohan, who, if you remember, this is his second one of the year, but in his first one in Canada it was raining and he didn't get out to push lap at all. And then there was something wrong with the car in this one, so he didn't get the full length of time that he would have wanted to get. And Jack Doohan, obviously he's the reserve for Alpine. He is in that garage nearly every weekend. He's working hard, and I really would love to see him in that seat. I think he deserves it. I think he's proved, hopefully through, I mean, I know he hasn't been racing in some time, but I just think he really deserves that chance. And it would be nice to see him in it this season. If that mid-season rumour did come about, I don't think it will come about, but I wouldn't mind seeing Jack in the car ASAP. FP3 was more of the wet. FP3, FP1 and FP2, not too much happening, but we saw some spins. I know Max spun in FP3. There were a few spins going off. I know Yuki was at FP1 or 2 that Yuki beached the car, and I think that was probably FP1 and caused that red flag. Full wets didn't get any use this weekend. It was the inches all the way, and turned out that was the right decision because obviously they needed them for the race. Also, I spoke about this a bit on TikTok, but it just made me realise again how much I need a Formula 1 race in Ireland. Like, I know the government wouldn't want that, and I know there's probably a million reasons why that wouldn't work, but I don't care. I just want it in Ireland, and then I can host something, and I can not have to go on a plane to go, and it would be so much fun having them in Ireland and doing Irish challenges and Irish-centred media and the Irish anthem. And I'm just jealous of English people for getting Silverstone. Like, I know obviously you've had that since 1950, but can we bring Formula 1 back to Ireland, please? I'll make the sacrifice and allow all the drivers to stay at my house that weekend. They can meet my dogs. And you know what? Turn my house into the paddock and we'll just race down my lane and down my road. That's fine. That will work. So can someone make that happen, please? I feel like I'm talking quite fast, but maybe you'll appreciate that because sometimes I can talk quite slow and stumble over all my words. I'm probably stumbling over them a lot more now that I'm talking fast, though. This is my first podcast episode, being 22. Also, how fun is that? Not that fun. Not actually. Doesn't really make a difference, but I get to listen to that song now because I can relate to it. Did you actually see Daniel's? It was so dumb. It was so dumb, but he was like weaving in the pit lane. It was quite dangerous, to be fair, but it's also just funny because like you just can't do that. Everyone knows you can't do that, and he was just like dangerous. Yeah, it was free practice, so obviously it only resulted in a reprimand, and it was his first reprimand of the season. But that's just sort of dumb, to be honest. I do know that he was saying that the steering was like pulling to one side a bit, so I guess that's probably what he was trying out. But that could have been, not that it would have mattered, his race wasn't, very successful anyway. But that was a bit of entertainment for FP3. And yeah, the English topped all of the free practices then. Lando was looking really strong all weekend. He was strong all weekend. So I'm sure that was a nice experience for the English fans at Silverstone watching it. I hope everyone who was at that race for the first time, maybe their first Formula 1 race, had an amazing time. Silverstone is an amazing race to be at. The general admission is so great there. I was only there once in 2022, but the vibes were there. The experience was there. It was rainy most of the time, but it was sunny for Sunday and we were just vibing. And if anyone is going in the future and wants some advice, let me know because I can talk about Silverstone. Okay, qualifying. I'm actually moving through this episode quite fast, but my last few have been really long. So enjoy this while it lasts, guys, because I'll be in Spain recording my next one in the beautiful sunshine. Maybe I'll do it outside. No, that would be a bit loud. That would probably be a bit loud. But I have to find a good location. I also might have an interview while I'm in Spain. I don't know, but I'm bringing all my equipment anyway. I need to find a good location for that. Anyway, quali. I thought qualifying was at 4. I nearly missed it. I've been so tired recently. I had to nap. And I set my alarm for 3 because I need a full hour to wake up after a nap because you know how you're just in a different world. And I'm especially because I don't nap very often, so I was sort of out of it. So my alarm went off at 3. Luckily I woke up at like 5 to 3 and my brain was like, girl, check what time qualifying is at again, because I really thought it was 4. So I checked what time qualifying was at and it was at 3. So, but I made it. I did watch it. I got there. I was a little half asleep, but it was fine. An intermediate start at qualifying. Honestly, I thought qualifying was going to be a mess. This whole weekend wasn't a mess, even with the rain though. My predictions for qualifying was Lando P1, Max P2 and Hamilton P3, which I didn't get wrong, but I've been on a roll of sort of getting my predictions right, so that was new. And then qualifying started, a few drivers in the bottom who didn't really get their laps in, and then to top it all off, Perez beached the car. I think it was his out lap even that he went off while, was he on the softs when he went off? Potentially. And he beached the car, caused a red flag. Obviously, he could have got pushed back onto the track and kept going, but you can't. You're not allowed to do that because that's interference with the steward. So there's a bit of talk about that because that's what he said on the team radio. So the last thing Perez needed, well, I mean, the first thing Perez needed was a good weekend. The last thing he needed was to be out in Q1, and that's exactly what happened. So I'm sure that was quite tough on Perez. And Christian did not look happy. There's this clip, because F1 TV are cheeky. This is a clip of Christian just looking so angry during like the red flag after Perez did that, and then it switches to Daniel, like a zoomed in picture of like Daniel on a poster or something like that. Basically, because there were more rumours about how Daniel could potentially replace Perez. Look, rumours are rumours. Red Bull have made it clear that Yuki is not in their vision for some reason. Obviously, his connections lie more with Honda, but I'd love to see Yuki in Red Bull, but I don't think that's going to happen. And basically, yeah, the rumour was that they need Lawson in that junior team, and maybe that's their plan. Their plan is to get Lawson in the junior team by boosting Daniel into Red Bull, but then Daniel didn't perform as they expected, so then they couldn't do that. But there's still time for Daniel, and there's still time for Perez. And I'll leave that there, I guess. I'll talk a bit more about Perez's contract later on in the episode. Also, has the red flag rule not came into effect where you lose your time if you cause a red flag? Because I thought that was a rule, or was that just a rule in discussion that never came apart? Because if you try, because that hasn't happened this year, because I know Perez didn't lose his time. And there was talk about like if the times didn't improve, he would like literally make it out to Q1 or make it into Q2 anyway. But everyone did improve and he was out, obviously. But I think that rule needs to be incorporated. Like, you lose your most recent time unless like maybe he had a slower time. I don't know, maybe that is a rule. I'm probably wrong on that. Don't quote me on that not being a rule, because it might be. Some investigations going on. I don't think anything came out of them. Stroll and Alonso. And then the rain came. And I didn't think they could improve. But then when they had the softs on, they did start to improve. And Bottas, Magnussen, obviously Perez was out, and then Ocon and Pierre were all out in Q1. Pierre had like 50 place grid penalty, which obviously just put him to the back of the grid, and well, we know he didn't actually start the race. He DNS'd on the Sunday with a gearbox problem. I think they decided not to risk it and just retired the car, or just pulled the car out of the race, I guess. I think the race had started when they decided to retire, so that was that, but I don't think he left the pits. Not a good weekend for RB. The setup was just not looking good once again. There were so many changes happening and they just didn't have the pace. They were both out in Q2. I saw Daniel's lap and the traffic was horrendous. And Daniel did say that, and he never usually points the finger at the team, but he did say he wasn't sure what the strategy was this weekend and why he was put out to do like his push lap in that traffic, and instead of like a cool and a push. It was just not the right strategy either, but on top of that, the car wasn't that fast, so they were both out in Q2. Charles out in Q2 for no like big reason was also quite big news, surprising news, I guess. Charles's unluck is just crazy these days. Like, he's so unlucky. I don't know, I guess it might have been an error, like he just didn't put lap together. I know the other factors with the rain and tyres and everything weren't great, but Sainz did get that car into Q3, so yeah, disappointing enough for Charles, and that sort of set up the rest of his weekend to be quite bland and not a great weekend. Not the weekend Ferrari definitely would have wanted at all. Sargent was unreal this weekend. P13, he was fast, he had the pace, he had that extra passion, I guess. Maybe the 4th of July power came to him this weekend, because he was right up there with Alex all weekend. I'll discuss his race in a bit more detail because I don't think a lot was talked about it, but well done on Sargent. That was a big move, and I think that's a good weekend. I think the team should look at that weekend and be like, that was a good one for Sargent. I know he didn't score points, I know he didn't make it into Q3, but he did well. I think he got what he could out of that car. And Hulk, on a different level. Like, Hulk has just been on a different level this season, and I really hope Audi are good. I know he's in Sauber, next year, which isn't looking too great. But I hope when he goes to Audi is good, because I just want to see what he can do in a great car. Because how is he doing that in a Haas? And like, you can tell because his teammate isn't doing that. So to get into Q3 and get that high into Q3 was really impressive. Obviously, Russell got pole at Silverstone, which I loved to see because I just love that. I love people getting pole at their home race. I thought going into the weekend, Norris would be the most likely English driver to get pole and to win the race this weekend, but Russell came out again to show that he can't be forgotten in these conversations, and I think he might be overlooked a lot. Like, oh, it's either between Max or Lando, but George is making that change with his not his recent form, honestly his form all season, but especially his recent form. The Mercedes car obviously was on it this weekend. The car has been really strong with Hamilton in P2 at his home race, a complete top 3 English drivers, which is great for the English fans. Yeah, I'd say the atmosphere to be at that Grand Prix this weekend was incredible, especially during qualifying. Like, all the English fans were happy with that top 3, I'm sure. And you know you're in a good place if you weren't happy that like your driver was P3 instead of P1. Like, that's quite a nice place to be in, because anything can happen from the top 3. We all know that. So then I read about Checo's contract clause, and basically, if you don't know, Checo's clause in his contract is that he can't be over 100 points behind Max, and he can't be more than 5 places below Max in the constructors, or his teammate, not Max. Well, Max is his teammate, you know what I mean? And as of now, so all of this is by the Belgian Grand Prix, so he can't be 100 points behind Max by Spa. And he is right now. He is more than 100 points behind Max, and he is now, after this weekend, 6th, I think, in the constructors. I think Piastri got him this weekend. So that is risky. When that happens, they can let him go because he broke one of the clauses in his contract, basically. Doesn't mean that they have to, it doesn't mean that they will, but it just means that it's a lot easier for them to demote him or fire him, potentially demote him. They could potentially, if I was Red Bull and I was seriously considering that, I would do a swap, I think, if I was Red Bull, I think I would be considering Yuki a bit more than they are for some reason. But if they are really serious about Daniel, I think I would swap Perez and Daniel at some point in the season. Especially if, say, Max secures the championship, which I know is like more unlikely that he would do that early. But I think, or even if like they've no chance of falling down a position or gaining position in the constructors, I would definitely swap Perez and Daniel for a few races. Like, put Perez in the RB, see how Yuki fares against Perez, and then put Daniel in the Red Bull and see how he does against Max. Obviously, I don't think they'd be expecting, but they just want to see if he was more consistent than Perez, or if Perez was a lot faster than Yuki and they realised, okay, we could get someone better in than Daniel into RB. So it would be quite a make or break for both of those drivers. Obviously, if Daniel didn't perform well in Red Bull, then too. So that's something to keep an eye on. Obviously, as it stands now, it isn't looking the absolute best for Perez. And to move on to the race did him no favours either. Clean start. I didn't think there would be a clean start. I thought that the Mercedes would have taken each other out, but to be fair, I was wrong to think that because George and Lewis do have quite a good boundary on track. I know it's been close sometimes, but I think all in all, they know to give each other space, even though they don't want to see the other ahead of them. So that was a clean start. A little boring of a start. I was hoping for something, so there'd be a bit of a switch up in positions, just for a bit of entertainment, but I was happy that no one DNF'd. Anyway, I know Alex got a bit of damage. He went into the back of Alonso. I think maybe Hulk might have had something to do with that going off, but, you know, first corner, first lap, didn't go to anything anyway. But the damage didn't seem to be severe because Alex was strong throughout the race. He finished in the points, and it was just a successful race overall. Obviously, like I said, Gasly didn't start the race. He DNS'd or DNF'd. Don't know which one is labelled at because I don't think he made it out of the pits. The strategies were a big call though this race. There were some strange strategies going on. I think most of the idea for most of the teams was that we need to stay on sauce for as long as possible and we need to get past this first part of rain because then there's more heavy rain coming and we don't want to be boxing twice. And that's what most teams did, and that was successful for most teams. I don't think Perez and Ocon who boxed for intermediates and then boxed for softs and then had to box for intermediates again. So that obviously Ocon's race was over after that. That wasn't the way to go. The other drivers could get through that light rain with the softs and they were still doing faster times than those on the intermediates. So strategies did play a role. Ferrari got it wrong as well. I know Charles was pitted early and Charles was nowhere, so maybe if that didn't happen, Charles would have had more of a chance to make it to the points in this race. But that did happen, and just shows you how important strategies are in Formula 1. Doesn't matter how fast of a car you have or how good of a driver you have if you get the strategy wrong. And the softs did not last long either. Lap 7, I know Bottas and... who started on the softs? I know those who started on the softs, Ocon and Joe or Bottas. I can't remember who it was now. But they lasted 7, I think it was Joe. Anyway, they lasted 7 laps and then they were boxing, and I'm sure their thought process there, and you do have to risk it sometimes, especially when you're the Alpine or the Stake or Sauber, whatever you want to call them, are so far behind. You have to risk it to get that pace at the start just in case there is a safety car and then you get to change your tyres anyway. And it is likely enough that there would be a safety car. We've seen what has happened past at Silverstone with Joe's very scary crash and Max and Lewis and countless other incidents. Yeah, it was just one of those times that strategy call did not work out. The McLarens were rapid, they were clean. Lando got George and Oscar got George and Hamilton got George. So George wasn't having a great race, and then obviously he retired the car, so that's even worse, especially after getting pole at your home race, and especially just it being your home race, the last place that you want to retire. But still, that did lead for quite an interesting race between the McLarens and Hamilton. Bit unfortunate for Oscar because he got shafted a little with the pit stops. I think during the second round of rain, I think it would have made more sense to double stack McLaren. I think Oscar would have lost a lot less time instead of putting him out for an extra lap on those tyres that he lost so much pace with. So I think in that they should have double stacked. I know the pit stops were a bit longer. I think Lando's was long enough, but yeah, still think they should have boxed because he came back out 6th or 7th after that, and Lando was caught up with him by the time that before he even got his tyres changed, Lando had taken the lead of the race anyway. But then obviously that not a favour, but obviously the luck sort of came back to Oscar because he knew the right tyres to be on were the mediums, so I don't know what that was. If you watched, there was just a thumbs down happened on my screen. Oscar knew that the right strategy to be on was the mediums. I think most teams knew that, but not a lot of teams had the mediums available to them. One team that did have the mediums available that didn't go to them were Visa, Cash App or B. I know Daniel had them and he didn't go on them. Don't know if that was his choice. I didn't hear his team radio at that time, but if that was a V-carb choice, then that was the wrong one, I think, because Daniel lost quite a lot of pace at the end. Pace already wasn't working. Actually, I did mention this about Daniel, but he had some serious problems before the race. They weren't even sure if he could start it. He had to get his whole power unit changed. He put in an old one, I believe, and I think a few other changes were made, so he just didn't have that speed. In the high parts of the track, his speed was incredibly low compared to the cars, so that was game over from the start for Daniel. I think he finished in P13, which isn't the worst position, but it's no points, so it's not ideal, especially with Haas closing up on Orby fast. For a rainy race, it was still quite a calm one. There were no spins or anything like that. I mean, a few people went off, but there were no crashes. Everyone kept it together quite well, and it's good that it was still an entertaining race without the need for a safety car or red flag or anything like that. Silverstone is quite good at that. It's usually an exciting enough race regardless. I think the midfield battle wasn't very exciting at this one, and the excitement did lie with the leaders and the top 5. Carlos, Hulk and Logan definitely had a quiet but successful race. Carlos was, not shown on the cameras, not making any mistakes, not making any bold moves, but still kept it together, kept it clean and kept it fast. Logan too finished just outside the points, which I'm sure was extremely painful for him, but he had some good overtakes. He had a good overtake on Magnussen, and Magnussen's speed was rapid at the start as well. Magnussen had a good overtake on Daniel, very smooth, very clean, fast. So Logan definitely deserves a bit of a look on that race and a bit of a congratulations, because I think even with all the added pressure, it can be hard to deliver when you feel that the team has such little faith in you, or at least, you know, some of the team. So I think that was quite impressive for him to be able to pull that off. And Hulk as well, a bit under the radar, just like hiding in the top 10. But that Haas was exactly what I said, just hiding in the top 10. He was just holding on to his position. He was set that he wasn't going to overtake, he wasn't going to lose out on any positions. Obviously, he had some work at the start, but good race from those three anyway. And I think Yuki as well was up there, P9, I think he finished, or P10. I think he got 1 point, so P10. And yeah, he got the best out of the car. Quiet race from Yuki as well, nothing too much to report on that. And then Lewis Hamilton winning. I mean, I'm sure not many people didn't love to see that. I mean, I'm sure some people did, because Lewis did have his dominant period, but I loved to see Lewis win. He was so emotional. I don't think I've ever heard Lewis cry on the radio before. So it really showed how much he meant to him. So it really did show how much it meant to him, obviously, getting that record of his 9th win at Silverstone, most at the track. So it's just stuff like that. Like, it's just so special. And he did his whole getting the flag thing again and bringing it around, and you could just tell how grateful he was for everything. He had a successful race. He had a fast race. It was definitely a Lewis Hamilton style race. He does well in those mixed conditions, doesn't he, though? He's good in the wet, he's good in the dry. And when it's a mixed sort of race like that, I feel like he thrives. And obviously his good qualifying and his good weekend in general, all weekend, was everything he needed. Everything came together. George DNF'd. I mean, Hamilton did seem to have that pace before George DNF'd anyway. So yeah, what a special moment. And for him to have his dad there was so cute. And obviously he just knows that in front of, like, how much that would have meant to the fans in his last year with Mercedes, and being able to do that for the team, and how special it was to leave Mercedes with at least another win this year. Who knows what will happen for the rest of the season, but at Silverstone nonetheless. So that's just so special. And Max as well, quite enough race. I know his speed wasn't there completely. The cool down room now was a little awkward, I think, with Max and Lando. They were sort of making small talk. Then Max got up to just like move his chair at some point. I was like, he does not need to move that chair. He just doesn't know what to say. Yeah, definitely Red Bull are not going to be happy with that weekend, with Perez nowhere and Max second. He got that pace on Lando. He made the right call going on to the hards, something Max is quite good at. I think Lando chose to go on the softs, so that is a bit on Lando. But the team have more data and could have saw the difference between the softs and the mediums during the race. They should have known to make him go on to mediums. I think that's something that the team needs to do with Lando. They need to step in and be like, listen, Lando, no, you're going to go on this tyre, and that's that, and you'll thank us later. So unfortunately that decision did ruin a bit of Lando's race. Obviously, still finished on the podium, still finished P3, but you could tell that he wasn't happy with that, or as happy as he could have been. I'm sure he was picturing himself on that top step, and with it being so close as well, would have been difficult, but I'm sure he was happy. So yeah, that was a special win for Lewis, and I'm glad he did get at least, again, one final win with Mercedes. Not saying that he won't win any more this season, but at least he has that secured, and he can look back at this season as his last season with Mercedes with a bit of a smile, knowing that that's probably one of the most special wins to him as well. I mean, he's had some special wins and some special championships, but that one will definitely, I'd say, be up there emotionally wise, because I feel like even mentally he might have just needed that. Like, he needed that boost and that reminder that he can do this, and that he is Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion. I'll do the riddle of the week. I'll give you the answer. Did you know who it is? It's someone on the grid this year, someone I talked about. It's Esteban Ocon, that's the answer. So Ocon, yeah, he's had a successful enough career. He won the European Formula 3 championships for Prema, and he won the GP3 series with ART Grand Prix. Then initially his first sort of steps into Formula 1 was as a reserve driver and a test driver for Lotus F1. He was a test driver then for Force India around 2015. Then he joined Renault in 2016 as a reserve driver, and he also took part in DTM for Mercedes. Then his official debut in Formula 1 was in 2016 at the Belgian Grand Prix for Manor Racing, and he replaced Rio Haryanto there. Then in 2017 to 2018 he joined Force India full-time, and he scored his first point at the Australian Grand Prix 2017, and he finished 8th in the Drivers' Championship with 87 points. Quite successful for your official first full season of Formula 1. He had a best qualifying position of 3rd there with Force India as well, and he finished the second season 2018 with 49 points, so a bit of a less successful year in the second season. And then he was a reserve driver for Mercedes in 2019, and he joined Alpine, where we see him now, in 2020. So in 2020 he was partners there with Daniel Ricciardo, and then 2021 obviously rebranded to Alpine, where he won his first ever Formula 1 race at the Hungarian Grand Prix. That was the race where Bottas went bowling basically, but Esteban hung on to that lead. He was not letting anyone else win that race, so that was quite exciting for him. 2022, another successful year with Alpine. He has just been consistent and successful. He hasn't been out of the world, he hasn't been bad, and his career isn't over yet, obviously, but I think that's just like, for a midfield team and at times back marker team like Alpine, that's sort of what you need. Like, just someone that's consistent and fast. He finished 4th at Las Vegas last year, which was quite exciting for him. And 2024, yeah, obviously he's competing alongside Pierre, another Frenchman, where he does not have a seat for next year, but he seems to have a few more options. And yeah, just like I said in the riddle, his birthplace, don't know if I pronounced that right, was Hervois, France. Can't speak French. I'm a Spanish girl. And he just seems like a good guy. Like, he just seems like a nice person. I mean, when I met him in Barcelona, he was really sweet, stopping to talk and take pictures with everyone, even though he was definitely in a rush. And I know some teammates don't see him completely that way, which is fine, because obviously the teammates have a complete different experience. Like Alonso, he was quite rootless with. Yeah, his first teammate, after his little break in Formula 1, Daniel, they seem to get on quite well. They seem to complement each other quite well in their driving style. I think that's all for today then. Obviously I'll continue my podcast when I'm on holidays, but so there might be a new location. I don't know if I'll bring this light with me, so it might be a little darker, but I'll bring my camera and I think it will be fine. Thank you so much everyone for tuning in. Again, obviously I post a lot more content regularly on TikTok and Instagram at Kristen Boyle on X on TikTok, and Kristen Boyle or at the Final Chicane _ on Instagram if anyone wants to follow me over there. And I appreciate you all coming back. I'm close to 500 on TikTok, not on TikTok, on YouTube actually, which is sort of fun because I was on 100 not too long ago. So I just want to say that I appreciate everyone who subscribes and comments. I read them, and especially on YouTube has definitely overtaken Spotify interaction wise, so well done YouTube. But Spotify, you are gaining in the last week, so that's interesting. But thanks so much guys. I will see you for the Hungarian Grand Prix next. And don't forget to tune in to my episode with RedBull design engineer Amy Gibbard next week. Goodbye.